Hello there, I'm Lloyd Evans and you're watching the John Cedars channel from the bunker. And as you know, I do like to catch up with fellow ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who can bring something to the table in terms of helping us figure out exactly what happens when you are a Jehovah's Witness and how it affects your life. Here to help me delve further into this side of things is my good friend Priscilla Smith, who joins me over Zoom from the Netherlands. Hello, Priscilla.
Hello.
So, Priscilla, you and I have been friends for a while now, and you actually, just for the benefit of the viewers, you helped me film the Reclaimed Voices documentary back in 2018.
I did, yes. I can remember us standing from front of the door with cricket noises.
Yeah, it was very, very helpful to me to have friends on the ground who could help me kind of capture that story, and the help of you and others was instrumental to that end. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have your own story related to Jehovah's Witnesses, and I think it would be really interesting to explore that. When did the religion, or how did the religion make inroads in your life?
Well, I was born into the religion. My parents joined later on in their lives. My dad joined during the 60s, and my mom later. So I was born in JW, and well, yeah. So that's the story of how I became one.
Sure.
And
So you were raised in the religion. You were indoctrinated. It wasn't something where you went into the supermarket of ideas and thought, here's a fun thing for me to commit my life to. So
no, I never had that moment.
No, I think that's an important thing for outsiders to grasp. It's that, when they see Jehovah's Witnesses, getting behind truly outrageous ideas, at least in many cases, it can't be said that these are things that were chosen by the witnesses. It very much is a case of child indoctrination at play. And how did these values and how did these ideas shape your upbringing?
Well, first of all, I had a very lovely upbringing. I have very good memories of my upbringing, and being a part of this like international family. So all the memories were good. I had a lot of friends in the congregation of my age, so a lot of little girls to play with, who all lived very nearby as well. So we used to play outside, and yeah, it was all lovely. I would call my mother's friends, and like women from the congregation, I would call them auntie, and the men uncle, and like it just felt like a family to me. So as a child, I quite enjoyed it, and I was also quite serious as a child and as an adult in the religion. So
Sure.
I was always very keen to be the best Jehovah's Witness I could be as a child as well.
To what extent did the fear of Armageddon factor into your thinking as a child?
Oh, well, that was that had a huge impact on me, especially as a child. I remember I actually had this dream a couple of weeks ago, the same dream I've been having since I was like 5 years old. And it is always about Armageddon and demons. I can remember, I think it's a tract or a brochure, I can't remember what it is, but I can still see this face of a black man, and it says something about demons or something on it. And that was very scary. I don't know which one it is, but that was
I know which one it is.
Very, very scary to me as a child.
I will show it on screen as we're talking.
Yes. It's very scary. And then you had called the Paradise Book, with all the other occult images and stuff like that. I studied that when I was a child. So yeah, that had a huge impact on me, and I was always quite scared of Armageddon because as a young child, not during comprehensive school, by the way, but as a young child, I was quite popular in school. So every girl wanted to have, me at their birthday party, and they would invite me over. And I really liked all the girls from school. And I was always a bit sad when I thought, oh, they're all going to die in Armageddon. And I can also remember that when I was little, then my parents and their friends would say, oh, that really big house on the corner, there was a huge sort of mansion. When Armageddon comes, we just make a run for it and claim that as our own, like at
that
first.
Was an odd one, wasn't it?
So weird.
I think lots of ex-witnesses, and indeed, I'm sure there are some present witnesses who watch the channel, can relate to that. And I've done it as well. But if you think about it, it's such a morbid... Well, first of all, it's quite materialistic to covet the home of someone who's still alive while they're still alive. But secondly, to have this idea that you're going to step over their smouldering remains.
That's it, yeah.
To claim their property, almost the minute after the dust has settled, or as the dust is settling. And yet this is kind of a normal thing for witnesses to say when they're out preaching, isn't it?
It is. And you make you laugh about it. And I used to have this joke when I was a teenager. I would go from door to door with a friend, and someone would be very ugly to us, or a bit mean, and they close the door, and I would just say to her, like, well, die then. So it's just if you think about it now, it is really surreal. And you think, how can you say it's almost like a Carrie, like the movie Carrie. It's very weird how you think about other people. And I had the same thing when I was in comprehensive school. I had to change schools in the first year of comprehensive school. Now, when you're like 12 or 13 years old, that is not something you want to do. You enter a new class in the middle of a school year. And I did, and I got a bit teased in the beginning, but they stopped because I really was like Carrie. I just thought, you're all going to die, so I don't care. Jehovah will take care of you, so you can tease me, but I really don't. It doesn't affect me. So, which helped me in a way, but it's also very disturbing.
It is. And this should be pointed out, the religion that prides itself on love and says concerning itself, love never fails. And yet, so many times individual witnesses, persuaded by their beliefs, will relish the demise of those who disagree with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you talk about kind of changing school. I can remember when I began, let's see, high school. So this would have been around the year 1990, 1991. I can remember my parents saying to me, we honestly didn't expect you to be old enough to go to primary school or elementary school, never mind you starting high school, because they honestly believed that Armageddon would be coming. So bear in mind as well the discouragement of higher education. To what extent did this sort of thinking impact on your education, on your development?
A huge impact, actually. So when you, in the Netherlands, you do like a few tests during your last year of primary school, and that decides on what school you're going to go to. And mine was almost like the second highest, the report that they give, like, okay, she has to go to this school. And I did go to this sort of higher education kind of comprehensive school, higher level, and I was doing all right, not too good, because my parents had to go to school, and I had to talk to them and said, oh, it almost seems like she needs to do another year, because I was already like a younger student. So they thought it would benefit me because I was still very childish, which I think also has something to do with sheltered upbringing. And they said, well, she couldn't do it, but I think she might have to redo the year, or go back a level, but then she can't go to university or whatever. So my parents were like, oh no, just take her off this school. It seems this school is very much towards university or higher education anyway. She doesn't need that. So so I went to not just one level lower, but 2 levels lower. So I could never go to university. in the end, it did not matter so much, for me. But I did struggle for a long time with the knowledge that I could have had. I really wanted to go to art school, for example, and it's not never went to art school. So,
But
I would have liked to have done that, but
but just to kind of make things clear, to what extent did the actual ideology play a part in kind of limiting you?
Well, like what you just said, my parents said the same thing, and everyone around me said, "Oh, Armageddon will be there as soon as we, you never go to comprehension school. I never thought I would get married, or I'm turning 40 next year. I would never think I would read
I'm on
that
the other
age."
side of that, so
Yeah, I mean, oh my God, I honestly, I would never think I would be this old. Um, and there's another story to this as well, which is I tried to explain this to a non-Jehovah's Witness friend, and she was like, "Ooh." When a few years ago, my dad had a stroke, and that was when I was still in contact with them. And that moment, and that was a moment when I started, not going to the meetings anymore. And I thought, wait a minute, my dad is maybe going to die one day, and I'm going to be there to witness this. And I sort of had to grieve about the death of my parents while they were still alive, because I never thought I would be there to have that moment of, oh my goodness, I'm going to stand by their grave, or that you, as a child, it's very hard to explain to a non-Jehovah's Witness what this feels like. But I never thought that would happen. I always thought, no, as a family, we'll go through Armageddon, and we we're in paradise, and I'll never have to deal with their death anymore. And now even I don't believe in a resurrection or anything. So all those things build up. I really had to grieve about that for a long time, just to deal with this information.
Would you say that the kind of naivety almost of Jehovah's Witness beliefs leaves you under-equipped to deal with real life issues like mortality?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I've dealt with them now to an extent. But the moment I was dealing with them, I was 30. So it's, even as a child, normal child, you would think, yeah, one day my parents are going to die, and it's going to be awful, and I'm going to live through it. But as a Jehovah's Witness child, you don't think about that moment.
I would imagine that things like mortality and dealing with the death of your parents is difficult for even people who've never been Jehovah's Witnesses to deal with. So that's probably worth pointing out. But
yeah.
I definitely relate to the idea that, well, these are just issues that we'll never have to confront, because we're, like you say, we're all going to sail through into the paradise someday.
Yeah.
You just briefly mentioned shunning there. I would like to I'd like you to go into more detail about that at some point. But before we do that, obviously, Jehovah's Witnesses have some quite narrow-minded views on the role of women and the extent to which women should be in subjection to men. These are issues that I obviously won't have run up against to the same extent that you will have done. So, to what extent were these ideas kind of formative in your experience?
Well, as you might have noticed, I'm quite opinionated. And I was, as well as a Jehovah's Witness, I loved to study into detail. And, that's not always appreciated, because as a woman, you need to, stay silent. And that was always very hard for me. I even had a friend in the congregation who said, I'm never going to get married because I don't want my husband to be my head of the family. So she just decided, I just don't want to do that. And yeah, I think it was at one point I suggested something about cleaning the Kingdom Hall. Um, and maybe some
Was
people
it a
don't know
method
this.
of cleaning the Kingdom Hall?
Yeah, some people don't know this. Yeah, normal buildings have like hired a hired cleaning company to clean
Yeah.
their building, but this is run by volunteers. And after every meeting you would go and clean the toilets, or hoover the Kingdom Hall and everything. So I was talking to this brother and said, we need some more of this stuff, and we don't have enough cleaning products, and it all looks a bit, can we change that? So I made a little suggestion on a piece of paper, and that they did not like that. They were like, no, you need to talk to this brother. And I'm thinking, yeah, but he doesn't know anything about cleaning either. Not that I'm an expert on cleaning, but still, why is it so bad that I made this A4 piece of paper with some rules of the cleaning on it? No, I didn't.
If anything, it showed that you were very anxious for the Kingdom Hall to be presentable.
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
go to that amount of trouble would surely be commendable, but maybe they just didn't like you expressing your opinion.
No, and yeah. So, and we also had like an account manager who was a woman in our congregation, who was always, I was sitting behind her and I could see her during the financial report, which was done by a brother, lovely man, but like a builder or something. And she was just making notes. Oh, he got that wrong. He got that wrong. Oh, that's not right. And then she would just like, excuse me, this is, I think you added that up a bit wrong there. So,
Sure.
yeah. And there was one point where I helped my dad. He was doing the maps of the territory. And because we both like drawing, I'm quite good at drawing, we thought, oh, okay, we're going to make new maps. It was before it was all done in a computer. So we make the maps.
Just for the benefit of those who don't know, who have never had any experience with Jehovah's Witnesses, a territory, each congregation is assigned a territory, and each territory is divided up into maps. So a map might be like a block or 2 or 3 blocks, or the equivalent in whatever country you're in. And these maps are literally drawn on cards or folded bits of paper, so that witnesses can see when they are, when they're assigning the territory on a given morning or on a given day. The person who is overseeing them can tell them which street to work and so forth. So that's what we mean when we're talking about maps.
Yeah. So after the meeting, before we were going out into service, one of the brothers there was scribbling on that new map we made. So I was like, what are you doing? I've been, I spent hours drawing that. Now I need to have a conversation with some elders afterwards, because they were like, you can't say that because your dad is in charge of this, and they can't know that you're doing this for your dad. So a woman was doing the drawing. That was just out of the question. So that was one of the it's just very weird anyway. I mean, I was married as well, and I had never had any problems with him about him being the head or something, but it was always very weird when he was not really a public speaker. No, not everyone is. So I used to help him with his talks, and I thought, that's a bit weird, really, when he has to be the head and he has to take charge in the education of me.
It must feel odd to, in the case of the maps, be putting in hours of work for which it has to be secret, so you can't take any credit for it because you're a woman.
Yeah.
And it must also feel odd when you are basically smoothing the path for your husband to give talks, and in a way teaching the congregation indirectly by again helping make the talk possible. So but again, doing so kind of in secret.
And just to see him struggle so much. I mean, if you're a shy person and if you're not you know, if talking in public is not something that comes naturally for you, I think it's torture to let people do this. And I always
Mm.
felt sorry for him because he had so much anxiety of doing it. And, you know, I don't think you should, you know, put
Yeah.
people through this only because, you know, you want to be a ministerial servant, or, you know, you just have to, really.
But even if it doesn't come naturally to you, it's still expected of you, isn't it?
It is, yeah, it's awful.
Yeah. And you know, you mentioned the fact that you were married, and without wanting to pry too much, it's obviously an open secret that there are lots of limitations put on young witnesses when it comes to their sex lives and who they're allowed to date. It has to be someone from inside the organization. To what extent did those sorts of rules kind of impact on your life?
Well, it is a lot of pressure because you want to be with someone.
Mm.
I also think, and you know, if he's watching, I don't mean that to hurt him or anything, but I also think that if we were, you know, living together before we were married, I don't think we've ever gotten married.
Right. You think that would have been a helpful part of the relationship early
Absolutely,
on
I
in
think.
determining suitability? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it would have ended after 6 months if we've done that before.
Mm.
But you're so clueless about things. So yeah, I don't really want to go into detail about that. But
No.
it's yeah, it didn't work out. And I think it would have been better if we just stayed friends.
Mm.
And that's the problem, because you want to be friends. I mean, I still have a lot of male friends, and it should not be a problem. But when you're a Jehovah's Witness, people, you know, immediately ask you, "Oh, who's that? Are you dating him? Are you going to get married?"
Mm.
You know, and him asking me to marry him after 7 months is quite quickly, you know, and then married the next year.
And when
It's
there are
all.
so many constraints placed on someone, like you say, I mean, not everybody. That there are those for whom, you know, the sexual impulse isn't quite so strong, shall we say? But it's fair to say that for a good number of young people, that's a strong kind of driving factor for them. And when there are all of these limitations, it's no surprise that you do have couples getting engaged after 6 or 7 months. I remember that was the case with Deanna and I. I think our courtship lasted 6 months before I proposed. So, and looking back in hindsight, you can understand
Yeah,
that there were immense forces that were shaping those decisions.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's almost like a sort of a joint effort, because I don't know if you had that at your wedding. But at the end of the evening, everyone was doing the hey, have fun, you know, like it's just gruesome. It's
Yeah.
horrible. It's embarrassing as well. It's like, oh my goodness, the whole congregation now knows what I'm up to.
Yeah.
It's awful.
It is. It's very strange. So you also mentioned again earlier that you're no longer on speaking terms, shall we say, with I think your parents. Talk us through that process and what led to you being estranged from your family.
Um, well, first of all, I love my parents very much, but um, they it's very hard because they have broken contact with me so many times, and every time they contact me again, and then I think, oh, okay, well, you know, I open my heart again, which, you know, you can't break a heart a million of times, you know. Sometimes it is too much to handle.
Mm.
um so they break off contact. They write me, well, my mother does, you know, like 10 pages of awful abuse, which then you have to deal with.
When you say awful abuse, are you
Oh,
able to?
well, you know, like, when I'm in paradise, Jehovah will give me a new daughter, or, you know, a daughter of Satan, or there's just a lot of things that, my dad had a stroke, he had cancer. Apparently I did that.
So they blamed you for your father's cancer.
Well, and also, especially for his stroke, because of all the stress of me that year, I decided I didn't want to be a Jehovah's Witness anymore. My dad had a stroke. So they said, can you ever forgive yourself for bringing all that stress on your father? And,
so you're supposed to live a lie just in case, by
absolutely
living an authentic life, it gives your parents some kind of health issue.
Yeah. Well, they would, I said to them, I said, I can't go to the meetings anymore. I said, it is physically impossible for me to go to the meetings. I would kill myself. Well, at that time I wanted to. So they don't seem to understand that this is a huge trigger for me. The whole thing around the witnesses is a trigger for me. And it is just unhealthy. So I kept trying to explain this to them. So they broke off about 4 or 5 times. And the beginning of this year, that was the last time I spoke to them. They were talking about them packing their suitcases and leaving them in the hallway. Because apparently the end is now very, very close.
How many months ago was that?
That was, I think it's January or February.
We've probably had to dip into those suitcases a few times since then.
Yeah. So they wanted to give me their key to the house, which is fair enough. You can give me the key, but I don't need that whole story about how the end is near and how, yes, Jehovah's Witnesses are putting in jail in Russia and blah, 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 which, I totally against all that, because, freedom of religion, I think. But, it's just sort of a scary story they're telling me. And I think it's just because they want to, try to get me back into the religion again. And so I said to them, I don't want you to talk about this. You can give me the key. I mean, you're at a certain age. I've got their details for their bank accounts as well. If something happens, I need to do all the paperwork and get that done. So yeah, it is, I think, a good idea to give me a key if we're still in good contact. But just say, we want you to have a key. Not that whole story. So then, of course, they were trying to smooth it over a little bit, and then I decided to break the contact. And then, of course, I got another email which was very, very hurtful again, that I'm a stranger to them and whatnot. So, as hard as it is, I think it is very unhealthy for us to keep in contact with each other.
That's I think you've hit on something interesting there, because I have similar issues with my family. You do reach a point where you kind of think, well, and I've got to tread carefully, but it's almost like a self-preservation thing. At some point, in order to kind of move on with your life, and in order to kind of reach a happy balance in your own mental health, you've got to kind of, in a way, recalibrate your affections and the way you feel about your family, because it's simply unsustainable to hold a candle for people forever, especially if they are going above and beyond in trying to make you feel miserable. It's not a healthy thing to keep wanting to kind of salvage something when it's unsalvageable, or even if it were salvageable, they would not be a healthy influence in your life.
No, and I have dealt with some serious mental health issues, and still sometimes. And if you're going up with your mental health like that, and then someone is doing that, I immediately fall back into old habits, into feeling, a lot of anxiety. I have blackouts. It's just, that is really not good. So I even had to block them in my phone, because if my dad calls me, I'm not picking up. And the other day, well, I think it's 2 months ago now, he called me, and I had a new phone, and I did not block, I haven't blocked him yet on that new phone. He was calling me 6 times in a row, and I could not work for a week. I was like, sort of frozen. So it is really unhealthy, and it's not very good when you have to run a business as well. You can't work for a week. It's just not, sometimes you have to make a decision that is healthy and beneficial for yourself.
Presumably, and I completely sympathize with you blocking them. Presumably, if you could receive some assurance from them that they would communicate in a mature adult way and not kind of guilt trip you or bring religion into it, presumably you'd be happy to have some kind of relationship with them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've tried that, and then, they saying in the last email that I am a stranger to them, and thinking, well, that's not really fair. Because you are treating me like a stranger. Not only that, you're almost treating me like Anne Frank. Like the other day, it was 2018, I think. They invited me to come to their house now. I haven't been to their house in a long time. They invite me to come to their house and go for dinner, which was a lovely day. But then you find out that it's actually the weekend of the convention. So no one in their little town is there. So, okay, should I come in the dark to your house so your friends can't see, or the witnesses can't see that you actually...
to keep you hidden away.
That's it. Okay. So I can't, have a relationship with people when, they can't even tell their close friends that they're still talking to me, or it's just unhealthy.
It is. And are we able to, just revisit, because you mentioned that you left the organization. What kind of prompted that to happen? Because obviously you explained earlier that you were taking the religion quite seriously at one point. So what changed?
I was thinking about that this week, and I thought, what was the first moment I had when I started having doubts, or when I had this gut feeling? And I think this was 1998, and I was on an intern. I had an intern for a few months, and at this business they had internet. I did not have internet at home. So the first thing you do is basically just, type in Jehovah's Witnesses. And the first website that came up actually was Silent Lambs.
Right.
And I was reading through it thinking, okay, I'm at an apostate website, but what? And I was reading through it and I was shaking because I could not believe it. And I clicked it away and I thought, I can't go back to it. And I did go back to it 3 times that week. But then I closed it. I prayed over, I prayed about it. I thought, oh no, this is imposter information. I can't read this. This is not right. So I forgot about it for a long time. And I think this was 2007. So it's almost 10 years later, when I was, so usually I would prepare the Kingdom Ministry, or is it Kingdom Ministry? I keep forgetting things now. And there was a question of readers. September 2007.
You prepare the Watchtower, do you mean?
Is it prepare the watch? I can't remember. It's something you do during the week, the 2 pages leaflet.
Oh yeah, that's a Kingdom Ministry, yeah.
Kingdom Ministry. And there was a question of readers, and usually I would be very prepared for the Kingdom Ministry, but wasn't that eating for some reason. So I didn't pre-study that one. And it came up, and the question was something like, does the Watchtower organization approve of using other literature for your research than their own? And the reply was, no, we don't. And that was the moment that it clicked in me, because I'm a huge book reader. I like my research. I like history. And I was like, wait a minute. You can't tell me I can't read a book.
Mm.
And then everyone was, you know, raising their hands, giving answers during that meeting. And even people that were my friends and I respected, and I would, you know, there were book readers as well, like me. They agreed, and I thought, why is no one is seeing this? How wrong this is.
Mm.
That you could only use their literature for your research. That's not research. So at that moment, I was so confused and so like almost outraged about it, that I thought, no one is telling me I can't read certain books.
Mm.
And that slowly started into me researching things online. So it took me 3 years eventually to leave. I faded. I was never disfellowshipped. I actually asked 2 times to get this fellowship, but they just ignored me.
Wow, that's interesting.
It's very interesting. But yeah, the that took 3 years of researching into detail. So I bought the Kingdom Interlinear. Well, I bought it. I got it from at the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting because the Kingdom Interlinear is, you know, you got Greek on the one side with English like written underneath you. You've got it there, I think, and the English on the right side.
I think I might have a copy to hand. I'll just get it off the shelf.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't. Now I can hear you.
There we go. Well, that's the one. So I got that one at the meeting.
Yeah.
And I started to use that one because it's only the New Testament.
Correct. Yeah. You have the Greek on the left, the English on the right.
Yeah, that's it. So as a sort of a personal challenge for me, I decided to use that one at the meetings, which is weird because it's actually one of their own publications, but it was seen as a bit strange at the meetings as well. Like I was reading almost apostate literature, but it wasn't.
I think probably the whole kind of women in subjection thing might have come in a bit there as well. Like, who does this woman think she is? Kind of trying to impress everyone by using the Kingdom Interlinear in the meeting. Why can't she just be satisfied with
just
using
reading
the normal Bible like everyone else?
Yeah. And actually that really helped me to understand it a little bit more, although it's, you know, maybe not such a good translation, but it's still you the things I was reading, I thought, wait a minute, they translated that completely wrong. Or so this is what they meant. So yeah, I got really into very deep Bible study. And you know, I even had a few sort of revelation moments about my relationship with Jesus, which is non-existent now, but at the time that really helped me to sort of see the truth for what it was. So you know, it started with a lot of Bible study, and then I found, I think it was 2 or 3 chapters of Raymond Franz's book online. They were translated into Dutch. So I read those 3 chapters and I could not stop reading. So that was done in half an hour. And then I decided to order the book online, which is also quite interesting because I ordered it online, but it was from a Christian bookshop in my town. So the guy called me up and said, "Oh, I see you from this town. You can come and pick it up." I said, "No, because I can't enter that shop because what if someone sees me?"
Okay.
So you have to send it to me. And he thought it was very, very weird. But, you know, I thought, if someone sees me entering a Christian bookshop, what are the odds of, you know, running into someone? It probably happened because, you know, that's just my luck.
Wow.
So I ordered that book, I think in 2008 or 2009. And I could not believe what I read. And then I was decided. I had decided I am going to leave. I can't stay here. I was going to the meetings, but it was yeah, it was it was torture for me to sit there and just listen to all these things I could not agree with. I was still going to the from door to door. I was still doing the ministry. I think I even was still auxiliary pioneering at the time, so I had to make the hours. And but at the end, I just didn't bring any literature anymore. I just got my Bible. I brought my Bible, and I would go from door to door, and I would say to the person I opened and said, I'm not selling anything, or, I just want to give you a good thought for the day. Are you okay with that? No, like, oh, okay. So I'd receive like Proverbs about friendship or something. I read that to them, like for 2 seconds, and they were like, said, okay, this is what I wanted to give you for today. And I'm like, oh, thank you. Oh, that's very nice of you. Thank you very much. Actually, and I've done my best ministry as an apostate because I could actually talk to people about the Bible instead of handing them some Watchtower or an Awake.
But doesn't it say everything about the organization that it's so controlling that you can have situations where witnesses do not believe anymore, and yet for whatever reason they still feel as though they need to keep up the pretense to the extent where they feel pressured to go to other people's homes and at least pretend to try to recruit them into the organization? It happened to me, I think, once, because when I moved to Croatia, I was barely preaching anyway because I couldn't speak the language. So I was basically just accompanying people in the preaching work. But I did go home to the UK for a holiday, and we stayed with a friend in Wales. I'm trying not to identify anything, but we stayed with a friend in Wales, and one of his ground rules for staying with him was that we go to the meeting and we go on preaching afterwards. So I found myself in this situation where, as an awakened PMO witness, there I was trudging around this Welsh village somewhere, knowing that I'd have to, if someone answered the door, I'd have to preach to them. And I think my solution was to say, hello, my name's Lloyd. We're just trying to interest people in a free home Bible study.
And the door was
which
closed.
Is an approved thing that they were encouraging people to say, and you just know what the answer's going to be.
Yeah, the answer is no. Yeah.
So pro tip for you there if you're watching as a PMO.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That, or just I think at one time because my husband at the time, he found out about the book because I stacked it behind a few other books, and he found it and he was very upset. So I had to talk to him about what my doubts were, and I also said to him, I don't mind if you still want to go, because that is your conscience. I don't want to influence anyone's conscience. And I still say that, about other people in the congregation still. I don't want to convince them. They have to find out for themselves like I did, because otherwise, then you still like a born-in Jehovah's Witnesses that, just agrees with everything their parents say. So I think it's good to do your own research. And nowadays with Google, you just find out anyway.
Sure.
But so when he found out, he was very upset, but it didn't take very long for him to, also decide he didn't want to go anymore.
Oh, really? So he woke up as well?
He woke up as well, yeah.
That was going to be my next question,
Yes, yeah. So he woke up.
Stressful to be in a marriage when you wake up, yeah.
Yeah. So he woke up as well. So he read the book. Actually, he read the book a lot later than I did. He read the book when I was gone. When I already left him, I lent him the book. And when we were going from door to door together, so we were both awoke, going door to door together, and we didn't even press the bell. We were just like, okay, just standing in front of this door so they know we're doing something here. And then we're just going down because, the houses are quite small. So you've got all these stairs going up and then you've got all the doors. So we would just stand there just sort of chatting with each other. And like, okay, well, let's go down now and meet the rest. Yes, very good morning in service, Didn't do anything and just went home. It's weird because you can just, get the little sheet out where you have to put in the numbers you make every month. Just put like a 4 in.
Well, you're already basically deceiving people, so you may as well go the whole way,
Yeah, and it feels wrong, and it feels so against your own nature because you don't want to. You don't want to deceive people. You want to be honest, but you can't really be honest.
No,
because you know what the consequences are.
Well, again, it speaks to the fear and the control in the organization that people, grown adults, find themselves in that situation where they've got to pretend that they're preaching. So when we were talking about you coming on the channel and doing this interview, you mentioned that you'd had an experience working for Jar-Jireh. Now, viewers who perhaps aren't so familiar with Jar-Jireh, this is an organization sort of loosely affiliated with Jehovah's Witnesses that specifically cares for elderly Jehovah's Witnesses. And I don't know whether that's fair. And you were working for them for a while.
Yes. In 2003, I moved to the UK, to Wigan, of all places. And so I worked for them as a carer. I didn't have any experience as a carer. But, they offered me a job anyway. And
so what was your thinking in accepting this job? Was this like a means for you to work part-time so that you could pioneer, or what was the logic?
2 reasons. I really wanted to live abroad for some time. And I gave that idea to my parents a couple of times, but they were not very keen on the idea. And then I found this, and I thought, oh well, this is like basically going to Bethel or something. I can sell this to my parents. So I told them, I want to go abroad. I want to go to the UK, and I want to work for Jah-Jireh, which is like a care home for Jehovah's Witnesses. I'll be around Jehovah's Witnesses all the time. It's a very safe environment. I'll be sharing a house with another Jehovah's Witness girl. So
what could possibly go wrong?
I know, yeah. It didn't actually, because it was. What I do remember from all the youngsters there is that they did some serious partying that I never did in the Netherlands. That was not allowed over here. But the home itself was lovely, and I still have very good experiences as working as a carer. But you also have to think about when you're elderly and you just want to have a chill, you still have to go through all this meeting stuff. So you would have every morning during breakfast, there's like praying before breakfast, or you would have on a Monday evening, you could prepare the watchtower. So an elder would come in and you could sit there and prepare the watchtower for the following meeting if you wanted to. The book study, we still had the book studies at home, was in the home as well. Then you would have sometimes the ministries, the meetings would be in the home, sort of to encourage the older people there. It was very even if you didn't want to. I mean, there was an old lady who was single her whole life because she was pioneering, and she just said, I don't want to go anymore. And they just put her in a wheelchair anyway and brought her to the meetings because she was part on the schedule to go. So you can't get away from it when you're old.
And bear in mind, presumably some of these people at least will have been there because maybe their children will have put them in the home.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And rather than simply it being a case of being cared for in their old age, in addition to that, it's a case of making sure they keep up this routine of observing all these different meetings and that kind of thing, which, like you say, if they've reached a point in their life where it's not so important to them, well, it's tough, you still have to go along with it.
Yeah. I remember the first evening I was there, and there was one lady sitting in a wheelchair like this. And I thought, oh, she's feeling really, really ill. So I went up to her and said, hello, sister. How are you doing? Are you okay? She's like, no, I feel awful. Like, oh, that's terrible. I'll go and find a nurse. So I went to one of my colleagues, and they were like, yeah, no, she has a hangover. She used to smuggle alcohol into her room.
Yeah, she had a case of Macallan's under her bed.
Yes, that's it.
So, well, interesting anecdote from my perspective. Well, first of all, you weren't that far away from me at this point, because Wigan isn't a million miles away from where I was living at that time.
Yeah. I think we went to the same assemblies.
It's possible our paths crossed at some point. But I can remember being an account servant around sort of, I'm going to say, 99, 2000, 2001. And I can remember an awkward conversation going on because I was questioning the fact that our congregation was sending monthly payments to Jar-Jireh, even though Jar-Jireh wasn't officially in any way affiliated with Watchtower, because one or two of the elders, because it was quite an elderly congregation, one or two of the elders were big fans of Jar-Jireh, and I think were eyeing it for their own future, and had basically coerced the congregation into sending, I think it was £50 a month out of congregation funds to Jar-Jireh. And I was basically, as best I could, as a lowly account servant, saying, well, you know, is this in the interests of the entire congregation for us to be sending this money? And this elder kind of gave me a very stern look, and said something along the lines of, when you're older, Lloyd, you'll understand why this is needed, or something along those lines. It was all very strange.
It was. And actually, when I moved back to the Netherlands, I spoke to a few people about this wonderful idea. And they started a few in the Netherlands as well. But that took a very long time because Bethel, Netherlands was very against it.
Yeah.
Even if you were involved with the project, there was a letter from the branch office saying that if you were like an elder or a ministerial servant, they would have to have a talk with you if you were involved with this project, because, you know, the Netherlands didn't want to have anything to do with this. I think because of legal reasons as well.
Yeah.
Because a few years before I came to Jar-Jireh, someone dropped an elderly person on the floor and broke her hip.
Yeah.
And it was, so when you do care, you always have, it says in the care book how many people per person you need. And this person needed 2 carers to handle him. And this one person just thought, I'd just do that on my own, and then dropped the person on the floor. The family were not Jehovah's Witnesses, so they sued the hell out of them. So after that, they became very careful in their communication about, we're not associated with, you know, Jehovah's Witnesses, very important that you know, but it is a home for Jehovah's Witnesses.
So, well, thank you for sharing all of this. I'm very keen on kind of helping any who might stumble on my channel who are still either believing witnesses, or maybe they're starting to think for themselves. And I'm especially keen to try and help people who aren't necessarily, you know, English speakers, or for whom English isn't their first language. Are you able to give a message in Dutch to any Jehovah's Witnesses who might have stumbled on this interview?
Yes, let me think. Nou, ik vind het leuk dat jullie naar me luisteren en dat jullie deze video hebben gevonden. En mochten jullie uit mijn oude gemeente komen, dan wil ik er ook bij zeggen dat ik dit niet doe om jullie pijn te doen, maar omdat ik dit doe omdat ik het belangrijk vind om mijn eigen verhaal ook te vertellen, omdat ik dat zelf nooit heb kunnen vertellen. En ik hoop dat jullie dit ook aanpakken om het zelf te gaan onderzoeken. Dus doe het, bekijk de video's van Lloyd en make up your own mind and success.
Excellent. Right. Thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome.
I understood the bit where you said Lloyd.
Yes. I just said watch his videos and make up your own mind and, you know, research. I also said something about my own congregation, people who are watching maybe from my congregation. I mean, I know that my parents find things and, you know, they say, you do that to hurt us.
Yeah.
I never do it to hurt people from the Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't do that, because most of the people I love that are still in there, deeply love, but I can't, still, have contact with them. So, yeah.
Speaking for myself, and probably you would agree, ultimately it all boils down to truth and wanting to live according to what's true, and wanting to get rid of as much untruth as possible. And so if people if there are witnesses who knew you when you were younger, who are watching this, I suppose, one thing that they ought to think about is, well, either it's true or it isn't. If you have proof that this is true, then let's hear it, But if you happen to find out that it's not true, and even that the organization is abusive in some way, it's morally it's morally required that you distance yourself from it, because why would you want to associate with something that's both untrue and abusive? So I don't know whether that reflects what's going on in your head.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the reason I'm also doing this interview is, again, not to hurt these people, but I'm also kind of doing it a little bit for myself, because I gave 2 other interviews before, and they were with worldly people. And I could never get my story across as, I really wanted to be as honest, because you have to explain a lot more.
Sure. Not so on the John Cedars channel.
No.
So, thank you so much, Priscilla. It's lovely to catch up with you. I'm sure many people will benefit from this interview. So thanks for chatting with me.
You're welcome.
So viewers, I hope you've enjoyed this interview. I know I have. Don't forget to subscribe to the John Cedars channel for more such interviews. And as always, thank you for watching.